Prince Kelechi was born into a world of gold, power, and fame. The Oduduwa Palace in Lagos stood tall like a symbol of greatness, its walls shining under the African sun. From the outside, people thought the prince had everything: expensive cars, servants, fine clothes, and respect from everyone. But deep inside, Kelechi felt lonely. His heart carried a quiet sadness that no one could see. Every day people bowed to him. Every word he spoke was followed by praise. Yet no one truly listened to him as a man, they only saw a prince. He wanted someone who would look at him and see a human being, not a crown. His father, Chief Namdi, often told him, "A prince must marry a woman of status. Love comes later." But Kelechi never agreed with that. He believed love was not something that could be bought or arranged. In the evenings, he often stood by the palace balcony, watching the city lights of Lagos in the distance. He could see the busy streets, the laughter of ordinary people, the markets full of life. He wished just once he could walk among them without guards or titles, to live free even for a short while. One night, as the cool wind blew through the palace, his aide and best friend Samto came to see him. Samto had served him since childhood, but he was more like a brother than a servant. "Your Highness," Samto said quietly, "you have not smiled in days. What troubles you?" Kelechi looked away and replied softly, "Samto, everyone around me loves the prince, but no one knows Kelechi, the man. Maybe love only finds a man when he is nobody." Samto was surprised. "Are you saying you want to hide your identity?" Kelechi turned to him, his eyes shining with determination. "Yes. I want to see how life feels without wealth. I want to meet people who don't bow before my name. I want to find someone who will care for me, not for my crown." At first, Samto thought it was just a passing thought. But when Kelechi began to pack his clothes, simple shirts, old jeans and sneakers, he realized the prince meant every word. "You cannot go out like that, my prince," Samto whispered nervously. "The king will be furious." "I know," Kelechi said with a small smile. "That is why you must help me. For just 1 month. I want to live as a normal man." Samto sighed deeply. "This is madness, but I will help you. You have a good heart, my friend. Maybe the world deserves to see it." The next morning, before sunrise, the two of them left the palace quietly. Samto carried a small bag filled with plain clothes, and Kelechi wore an old baseball cap that covered his face. They rode in a small car to the edge of the city, far from the royal district. The noise of Lagos was loud, horns, shouting vendors, music and laughter mixed in the air. Kelechi felt both nervous and excited. They reached a small motorbike shop owned by one of Samto's cousins. "He needs a delivery job," Samto said with a wink. "Can you help?" The cousin, a tall man with a cheerful face, nodded. "We always need delivery riders. What's your name, young man?" Kelechi paused for a second, then smiled and said, "K. Just call me K." From that moment, Prince Kelechi of Oduduwa became K, the new delivery man. His first day was full of surprises. He had never ridden through crowded streets without police escorts. He had never waited in line for food or seen children run barefoot through puddles. Everything was new to him: the chaos, the noise, the beauty of ordinary life. He struggled at first. The delivery bike was old and slow. Sometimes it broke down and he had to push it for long distances under the hot sun. He felt the sweat on his face, something he had never experienced in his royal life. Yet instead of feeling tired, he felt alive. At one point he stopped at a roadside stall to buy a bottle of water. The woman selling it smiled warmly. "You look new here, my son. Where do you deliver from?" Kay laughed softly. "From the local depot nearby. I'm still learning." "Ah, Lagos will teach you fast," she said with a grin. "Here, take 1 bottle free. You look like a good boy." No one called him Your Highness. No one bowed. And yet, he felt more respected in that small gesture than in all the royal greetings he had ever received. Later in the day he made his first real delivery. It was to a small bakery called Golden Loaf Bakery, a humble shop at the corner of a busy street. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, making him smile. He parked the bike and stepped inside. Behind the counter stood a young woman wearing a flour-stained apron, her hands busy kneading dough. She looked up and said cheerfully, "Delivery boy, you came right on time. We were almost out of flour." Kay blinked, surprised by her confidence. "Ah, yes, ma'am. I'm here for the drop." She laughed. "Don't call me ma'am. My name is Adaora. You must be new." He nodded. "Yes, I'm Kay." "Well, Kay," she said, wiping her hands on her apron, "welcome to Golden Loaf. If you work hard, maybe I'll give you a free bun one day." Kay chuckled. Her voice had warmth and her eyes shone with kindness. Not the kind of fake charm he was used to, but something pure. For the first time he didn't feel like a prince or a stranger. He felt like someone who belonged. As he rode back that evening, the sun was setting over the rooftops, painting the sky orange. Kay thought about Adaora and the world he was beginning to discover. A world that smelled of bread, sweat, and truth. When he reached the small room he was renting, Santo was waiting for him. "How was your first day, my prince?" Kelechi laughed and sat down. "Exhausting, but beautiful. No one called me your highness. No one cared about gold or titles. I was just a man, Santo. A simple man." Santo smiled proudly. "Then your journey has begun." That night, Kelechi couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Adaora's smile, the laughter of the people on the streets, and the way the city came alive after dark. For the first time in his life he felt hope. The hope that maybe, just maybe, somewhere in this ordinary world he would find the love he had been searching for all along. The next morning he woke up early, dressed in his simple clothes again, and prepared for another day as Kay, the delivery man who was secretly a prince looking for something far greater than a throne. He was looking for a heart that would see him for who he truly was. The next morning, Kay rode his old delivery bike through the busy streets of Lagos. The city was already alive. People shouting, cars honking, sellers calling out prices, and children laughing as they chased one another by the roadside. The sun was bright, but the air carried the smell of fresh bread and roasted corn. It was a simple kind of beauty that he had never noticed when he lived in the palace. His first stop, as always, was Golden Loaf Bakery. He parked the bike carefully in front of the shop and took a deep breath. There was something about that small bakery that made his heart lighter. The walls were painted yellow and the sign above the door was a bit old, but inside it felt warm and alive. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air, mixed with the laughter of workers and the sound of trays clinking. Adaora was at the counter, her hair tied back with a scarf, flour dusting her cheeks. She looked tired but cheerful, humming softly to herself as she arranged loaves of bread in baskets. When she saw him walk in carrying a sack of flour, her face lit up. "Delivery guy, you came just in time," she said, grinning. "The bread won't walk itself, you know." Kay laughed. "Then it's a good thing I came to carry it for you." She raised an eyebrow playfully. You talk too smooth for a delivery man. Are you sure you didn't work in an office before?" Kay chuckled, trying to hide his surprise. "Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But right now, I deliver flour." She laughed again, shaking her head. "Well, if you keep coming on time, maybe I'll give you a slice of cake one day." Every word she said felt simple but full of life. Kay had met countless women in his royal life, elegant, polished, and polite, but none of them had spoken to him with such honesty. Adaora didn't know he was a prince, yet she spoke to him with ease, even teasing him. It felt good to be treated like an ordinary person. As the days passed, Kay found himself returning to the bakery more often than his job required. Sometimes he came under the excuse of delivering supplies. Other times he said he needed to collect receipts. But the truth was simple, he came because of her. Adaora worked harder than anyone he had ever known. From early morning till evening, she baked bread, served customers, cleaned tables, and still found time to help her mother at home. Her mother, Mama Ruth, was a kind woman who often sat at the corner of the shop, wrapping loaves and chatting with customers. She was widowed years ago but never allowed sadness to break her spirit. One afternoon, as the shop grew quiet after lunch hour, Adaora noticed Kay standing near the counter looking at the shelves. "You're always here, Kay," she said with a smile. "Do you love bread that much?" He smiled shyly. "Maybe I just like this place. It feels peaceful." She nodded. "It's hard work, but I like it too. My father built this bakery with his own hands before he passed away. Mama and I try to keep it running even when business is slow." There was a pause, then she added softly, "Sometimes I dream of turning this small shop into a big one, with machines and workers and a new signboard. But dreams cost money." Kay looked at her with quiet admiration. "Dreams cost courage too," he said. "And I think you have more courage than most people." Adaora smiled, touched by his words. "You talk like someone who's seen the world." "Maybe I've seen too much of one kind of world," he replied softly. She didn't understand what he meant, but she could sense something hidden behind his calm eyes, something deep and sad. Still, she didn't ask. She liked him the way he was, simple, kind, and always ready to help. Every evening after his last delivery, Kay would stop by again, pretending he needed to check something. Sometimes he helped Adaora carry heavy bags of flour. Other times he fixed the loose window that wouldn't close properly. Once, when the bakery's small fan broke down, he spent an hour repairing it, sweating in the heat. Adaora brought him water and laughed when his face was covered in dust. "You're not just a delivery man," she said teasingly. "You're a mechanic too." He smiled. "A man must learn everything if he wants to survive Lagos." "True," she said. "This city doesn't give anything for free." In those small moments, Kay found something he had never felt before: peace. He no longer cared about royal meetings or golden halls. He looked forward to simple things: the smell of warm bread, the laughter of customers, and the sight of Adaora brushing flour off her face with the back of her hand. One afternoon, when the rain started pouring heavily, Kay was trapped inside the bakery. Thunder rolled outside and water streamed down the street. Adaora lit a small lantern and handed him a dry towel. "Sit down, Kay. The rain won't stop soon." He smiled and sat on an empty flour sack. "Thank you." They sat quietly, listening to the rain hit the roof. After a while she said softly, "You're not like other men I know." "How so?" he asked. "Most men who come here talk too much, brag about money, or try to show off. But you're different. You listen." He looked at her, trying to hide the warmth he felt inside. "Maybe that's because I finally found someone worth listening to." She blushed and looked away. "You're a smooth talker, Kay." He laughed. "No, just honest." That night, as he rode home through puddles and quiet streets, he couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in his life he felt seen, not as a prince but as himself. Santo noticed the change immediately. When Kay returned to their small rented room, dripping wet but smiling like a boy, Santo asked, "You look happy. Did you win a lottery?" Kay shook his head. "Something better. I met someone who makes me forget I'm a prince." Santo raised an eyebrow. "Ah, so the bakery girl again?" Kay nodded. "She doesn't know who I am and I want to keep it that way. She treats me like I'm just Kay, and that's all I've ever wanted." Santo sighed, half amused, half worried. "Be careful, my prince. You are walking a thin line. What will happen when she finds out?" Kay looked out the window, the city lights shining through the rain. "I don't know. But for now, I just want to feel what it's like to live in love without gold." The next day he returned to the bakery early. Adaora was already sweeping the floor, humming a soft tune. When she saw him she smiled. "You're early, Kay. The deliveries can wait, can't they?" He grinned. "Not when the day begins here." She shook her head, laughing. "You'll talk yourself into trouble one day." Maybe she was right, he thought. Maybe this simple life would one day crash into his hidden truth. But in that moment, as he helped her arrange loaves of bread and heard her laughter echo in the small shop, he didn't care about palaces, crowns, or secrets. All he knew was that his heart was finally full, not with power or pride but with something soft, real, and new. Something he had been missing all his life. And every time Adaora looked at him and smiled, Kay felt certain that this was the beginning of something that would change both their worlds forever. The days at Golden Loaf Bakery grew warmer and busier. The smell of fresh bread floated into the streets every morning, drawing people in from nearby shops. Kay arrived early, sometimes before the other workers, just to help Adaora open the shutters or arrange trays of dough. He had become part of the bakery's rhythm, though no one knew where he came from or why he cared so much about the work. But as time went on, the whispers began. The bakery workers were friendly, but some had sharp tongues. One afternoon, as Kay wiped flour from the counter, two women stood by the back door talking quietly. "Have you noticed how that delivery boy looks at Adaora?" one said with a smirk. "I have," the other replied. "He acts like he's one of us, but I can tell there's something strange about him. Poor boy, dreaming too high. Adaora is too smart for that." They laughed softly, thinking he couldn't hear. But Kay did. He didn't say a word, just kept working, pretending not to notice. Inside, though, he felt a small sting. He had never known what it was like to be judged for being too poor. As a prince, people had always respected him because of his title. Now they saw him as nothing more than a simple delivery man. Later that day, Adaora noticed his silence. "Kay, are you all right? You've barely said a word today." He smiled faintly. "I'm fine. Just tired." She wiped her hands and looked at him closely. "You're lying. You always talk when you're happy. Who upset you?" Kay laughed a little. "You read me too easily, Adaora. Maybe people think I'm not good enough to work here." Adaora frowned. "People always talk. If you listen to gossip, you'll never move forward. You work hard, you're kind, and that's enough for me." Her words warmed him more than she could imagine. In the palace, no one spoke to him with such honesty. She didn't care where he came from, only how he treated others. That evening, as the bakery closed, Adaora locked the door and turned off the lights. Kay helped her sweep the floor, the sound of the broom scratching softly on the tiles. When they finished, she smiled tiredly. "Thank you, Kay. You make work easier." He shrugged. "Maybe it's because I enjoy being here." She laughed. "You're strange, you know that?" He grinned. "Maybe that's why you talk to me." She rolled her eyes but didn't deny it. Meanwhile, back at the Odujuwa Palace, Chief Namdi was growing impatient. He sat in the royal chamber, surrounded by guards and advisors. "It's been weeks," he shouted. "My son is missing while royal meetings wait. Where is Prince Kalechi?" The chief advisor bowed. "Your Majesty, we have searched the nearby estates and the city. There is no sign of him." Chief Namdi slammed his fist on the table. "He is a prince, not a street boy. If the press learns of this, the royal name will be shamed. Find him." But Kalechi had no plans of returning, not yet. He had found peace in the simplicity of his new life. For the first time he could breathe without the weight of expectations. He could walk through markets, buy roasted corn by the roadside, and talk to people who didn't care about his title. One evening, Kay and Adaora sat on the bakery's rooftop after closing. It was their quiet place, a small world above the noise of Lagos. The air was warm, the sky painted orange by the setting sun. Below, the streets were busy, but up there, everything felt calm. Adaora hugged her knees and sighed. "Do you ever wonder, Kay, what your life would be like if things were different?" He glanced at her. "Different how?" "Maybe if you had more money or came from a big family. Would you still be doing deliveries?" He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But money doesn't always mean happiness. Sometimes it just means more noise." She looked at him curiously. "You talk like someone who's seen both sides." "Maybe I have," he said softly. There was silence between them for a while. The wind brushed past, carrying the smell of baked bread and rain. "Tell me," he asked gently, "what do you truly want in life, Adaora?" She thought for a long time before answering. "Peace," she said finally. "Not riches, not fame. Just peace. To live without fear, to wake up every day knowing I've done my best. And maybe someone who's real. Someone who won't lie or pretend." Her words struck him deeply. He stared at her, thinking about his own life, the lies he was living, the truth he was hiding. He wanted to tell her everything right then, who he really was, where he came from, and why he was pretending. But fear stopped him. What if she walked away? What if she looked at him differently after knowing the truth? Instead, he smiled sadly. "That's a good dream, Adaora. Simple but strong." She looked at him, her eyes warm. "And you, Kay? What do you want?" He looked out at the horizon. "I want to be free. Free from everything that tells me who I should be. Free to choose my own path even if it's not perfect." Adaora nodded slowly. "Then we're not so different." For a long moment they sat in silence, watching the sun disappear behind the rooftops. The city lights began to glow one by one. Down below, a group of children laughed as they chased a ball across the street. Kay smiled softly. "Life looks so simple from up here." Adaora laughed. "That's because you're not paying the bills." He laughed too, the sound gentle and full of peace. That night as he rode home, his mind was full. He had lived as a prince for years but had never felt as alive as he did now. Yet he also knew the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. The whispers at the bakery, the growing anger in the palace, it was all closing in. Samto noticed the worry on his face when he returned. "You're falling deeper, aren't you?" he asked. Kay sat down heavily. "I can't stop thinking about her, Samto. She's different. She sees the world the way I wish I could." Samto nodded slowly. "But remember, your secret is a fire. Sooner or later it will burn through everything." Kay sighed. "Then I'll face it when it comes. For now, I just want to live this dream a little longer." At the same time, the royal guards were closing in on his trail. A local vendor had recognized his face from a newspaper and mentioned it to a palace messenger. The information soon reached Chief Namdi. "So he hides in Lagos as a commoner?" the chief growled. "Let him enjoy his foolish games. Soon I'll bring him back, crown and all." But in the small world of Golden Loaf Bakery, Kalechi, now Kay, didn't know any of that. He only knew the warmth of Adaora's laughter, the smell of fresh bread, and the peace of sitting beside her on the rooftop as the city lights flickered below. For him, those quiet moments were worth more than any kingdom. And though he didn't realize it yet, every step he took in this simple life was leading him closer to the truth, and the test that would soon reveal what love truly meant. The morning began like any other at Golden Loaf Bakery. The air smelled of warm bread, and Adaora hummed softly as she arranged loaves on the shelves. The workers laughed and customers chatted while waiting for their orders. Kay arrived as usual, parking his old delivery bike outside and smiling at the sight of her through the window. He walked in carrying a bag of flour. "Good morning, Adora," he said cheerfully. She looked up and smiled. "You're early again. Do you ever rest?" "Not when the day begins here," he replied, grinning. She rolled her eyes and laughed. "You and your smooth words. One day I'll make you pay for teasing me so much." Kay chuckled and began helping her move sacks of flour to the back room. Everything felt calm, simple, and familiar, until the sound of engines broke the peace. From outside came the deep growl of multiple cars pulling up. The laughter in the bakery stopped. Customers turned their heads toward the door as black cars lined the street. The bakery workers peeked out the window and gasped. Men in fine uniforms stepped out, their polished shoes and dark sunglasses gleaming in the sun. At the front was Chief Namdi himself, his royal robe shining with gold embroidery. He looked powerful and angry. The guards spread out quickly, forming a line in front of the bakery. Adora's heart raced. "What's happening?" she whispered. Kay froze, his eyes widening. He had feared this moment, but deep inside he knew it would come one day. Samto, who had been waiting outside on another bike, ran into the bakery, his face pale. "Kay, no, Your Highness, it's your father," he said quietly. Adora turned sharply. "Your Highness?" she repeated in disbelief. Chief Namdi stepped inside, his expression cold. The workers bowed in confusion and customers backed away. The air felt heavy. Everyone's eyes turned to Kay, who stood still, his hands trembling slightly. "Prince Kalechi," Chief Namdi said sternly, "your games end today. You have hidden among commoners long enough. The palace has been in chaos because of you." Adora's mouth fell open. She looked at Kay, her voice shaking. "Prince? What is he talking about?" Kay slowly removed his cap. The crowd gasped as his neatly combed hair and royal features came into full view. His calm eyes, once simple and kind, now carried the weight of a secret too big to hide any longer. "Yes," he said softly. "It's true. My name is Prince Kalechi of Odujawa Kingdom." Silence filled the bakery. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator could be heard. Adora took a step back, her face pale. You lied to me all this time?" Kalechi swallowed hard. "I never meant to lie, Adora. I just wanted to live a normal life, to meet someone who saw me for who I really am, not for my crown or my father's wealth." Tears filled her eyes. "So, everything you said, everything we shared, was that also a lie?" He shook his head quickly. "No. Every word was true. I meant it all. You were the first person who ever looked at me like I was human. I didn't want to lose that." Chief Namdi stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Enough, Kalechi. The palace awaits. You have embarrassed this family long enough." But Kalechi didn't move. His eyes stayed on Adora, his voice trembling. "I only wanted to see who would love the man, not the gold. I didn't mean to hurt you." Adora's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The bakery workers whispered among themselves. "He's a prince? No wonder he was different. And she didn't know?" The room buzzed with shock and gossip. Chief Namdi turned to Adora and said in a firm voice, "You should be grateful, young woman. My son's foolishness ends here. Forget all this and return to your life." Adora looked at him, anger and pain mixing in her eyes. "With all due respect, sir, I didn't ask for your son's crown. I only knew a man named Kay who was kind and humble. If he's a prince, then that man is gone." The king's eyes softened for a moment but quickly hardened again. "Come, Kalechi," he ordered. Samto placed a hand on Kalechi's shoulder. "You should go, my prince. Not here, not like this." Kalechi's throat felt dry. He wanted to explain, to beg her to understand, but she wouldn't look at him anymore. Her eyes were full of disappointment. He finally whispered, "Adora? I never meant to deceive you. Please believe me." She turned away, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You should go, Your Highness. You don't belong here." The words cut through him like a blade. Slowly he stepped back toward the door. As he walked out, the workers moved aside in silence. Chief Namdi followed, his guards surrounding them. Cameras from nearby shops began flashing. The news of the prince's discovery spread quickly, the missing royal found among ordinary people. Outside, the city buzzed with noise, but Kalechi heard nothing. His heart was heavy, his mind full of her face. The bakery, the laughter, the rooftop sunsets, all of it now felt like a dream slipping away. As the cars drove him back toward the palace, Samto sat beside him quietly. "You did what you came to do," he said gently. "You found real people, real feelings." Kalechi looked out the window. "And I lost the only one who ever made me feel real." When they reached the palace, the golden gates opened slowly. Servants bowed and the royal guards saluted, but he didn't smile. Everything that once felt grand now seemed empty. Chief Namdi turned to him. You will forget that girl. You will marry someone worthy of your status. This foolishness ends here. Kelechi faced him. Father, what is worth if it costs me truth? What kind of life is that? But the king walked away without answering. That night, Kelechi stood on his balcony staring at the stars. He could still hear Adaora's voice in his head, the way she laughed, the way she spoke about peace and honesty. He missed her. Every part of him wanted to go back, but he knew she wouldn't forgive him easily. In the bakery, Adaora tried to continue working as if nothing had happened. Customers whispered when they saw her. That's the girl the prince was pretending with, they said. She pretended not to hear them, but inside her heart ached. The smell of bread no longer brought her joy. Every corner of the shop reminded her of him. The counter where he laughed, the shelf he helped fix, the spot where they stood watching the rain. Mama Ruth noticed her sadness. My daughter, she said softly, sometimes love hides behind mistakes. The question is whether you can see the truth inside the hurt. Adaora wiped her tears and whispered, I don't know, Mama. You lied to me. How can I trust him again? Because sometimes, Mama Ruth replied, a lie can come from a heart that only wanted to be loved. That night, Adaora sat by the bakery window watching the streetlights flicker. She thought about Kay or Prince Kelechi, and the way he had looked at her before he left. She remembered the kindness in his eyes, the honesty in his laughter. She whispered to herself, maybe he really was looking for love, not gold. But then she sighed. Still, he should have told me. In the palace, the prince whispered the same words under his breath. I should have told her. Two hearts, miles apart, both filled with the same ache, one of love lost and truth too late revealed. The city of Lagos moved on as always, but in one bakery and one palace, time seemed to stand still. And though the world now knew his secret, Prince Kelechi had never felt so hidden, so empty, and so unsure if the woman he loved would ever forgive him. Weeks had passed since the day the truth had been revealed. The city had returned to its usual rhythm, noisy streets, shouting vendors, and laughter floating through the humid air. But inside Golden Loaf Bakery, Adaora's world had grown quiet. She had taken over full management of the bakery after her mother fell ill, working longer hours than ever before. Every morning she arrived before sunrise, her hands busy with dough and her heart heavy with thoughts she couldn't push away. People still whispered when they saw her. Some said she was foolish to let a prince go. Others said she was lucky to have caught his heart, even for a short time. Adaora tried not to listen. She only focused on the oven, the bread, and the smell of freshly baked hope. But even as the bread rose each morning, her heart refused to do the same. One bright afternoon, she was arranging loaves on the front shelf when the sound of an engine outside caught her attention. She looked up and froze. A royal car had stopped in front of the bakery. It wasn't the kind that usually came with guards or grand announcements, just one simple black car, shining quietly under the sun. Her hands trembled slightly. For a moment she wanted to hide behind the counter. Her heart raced. No, it can't be him, she whispered to herself. The door opened and Prince Kelechi stepped out. But this time he wasn't wearing royal robes or surrounded by guards. He wore a simple white shirt, dark trousers, and a calm smile that spoke more than words ever could. Adaora stood still, her breath caught in her throat. The bakery workers watched in stunned silence. Kelechi walked toward her slowly, each step filled with quiet meaning. When he reached the counter, he placed a small brown paper bag in front of her. Inside was a loaf of bread wrapped neatly with a red ribbon. He smiled gently. For the woman who fed my heart when I was hungry for truth. Adaora's eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. The words hit her softly, like the warmth of morning light after a storm. You came back, she whispered, her voice shaking. I never really left, he said quietly. Every day since that morning I thought about you, about what I did and how I broke your trust. I was foolish to hide who I was, but I wanted to be seen for the man beneath the crown. You gave me that even when you didn't know. Adaora wiped her tears with her apron and took a shaky breath. You lied, Kelechi. You made me believe in something that wasn't real. He nodded, his eyes full of regret. You're right. And I would take it all back if I could. But the truth is, I was more real with you than I ever was in the palace. You made me laugh like a normal man. You made me forget I was born into gold. You showed me what it means to live. The bakery was silent. Even the workers behind the counter stood still, not daring to interrupt. Adaora looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached for the bag, slowly unwrapping the red ribbon. Inside she found not just a loaf of bread, but a small golden ring resting on top of it. Her lips parted in surprise. "What is this?" she asked softly. Kelechi smiled faintly. "It's not a royal order. It's a promise. I came not as a prince, but as the same man who once rode a delivery bike just to see you smile. I'm not asking you to be a princess. I'm asking you to let me try again, as your friend, your partner, and maybe one day your husband." Adaora blinked back her tears, her heart torn between disbelief and warmth. "Kelechi, the world you come from, it's not my world. People will talk. They already do." He stepped closer. "Let them talk. Love doesn't need permission to exist. You taught me that." She looked at him, the same gentle eyes she had fallen for when he was just the humble delivery man. Everything inside her wanted to resist, to stay safe behind the walls she'd built. But the truth was she had never stopped thinking about him. Finally she smiled through her tears. "And for the man who taught me that love isn't about titles," she said softly, finishing his line. Kelechi's face lit up with relief. "Does that mean yes?" Adaora laughed quietly. "It means you can start by helping me serve customers again, Your Highness." He grinned. "Gladly." That afternoon, the people of Lagos witnessed something strange. A prince in a white shirt standing behind the counter of a small bakery, laughing as he handed loaves of bread to customers. The story spread through the streets like fire. The prince had returned to the girl who once saw him as a man, not a crown. When the king heard of his son's act, he was silent for a long time. Chief Namdi had always believed that royalty and simplicity could never mix, that a crown and a common heart could not share the same rhythm. But when he saw his son's happiness, real, deep, and peaceful, something inside him changed. That evening he called Kelechi to the palace. "My son," the king said quietly, "you have done what few men of power can do. You have found love that is pure. If she makes you this content, then she is already royal in spirit." Kelechi bowed his head. "Thank you, father." The king looked at his son for a long moment and added, "Invite her to the palace. The people will see what true love looks like, not in riches but in truth." A week later the palace gates opened again, but this time not for guards or meetings. It was for Adaora, dressed in a simple cream gown, her heart pounding as she walked into the same place she once feared. The ceremony was small but full of warmth. The court ladies whispered, the ministers smiled, and the people of Oduduwa celebrated. For the first time, the golden halls echoed with laughter that felt human, not royal. Kelechi held her hands and whispered, "You see? I told you, love doesn't need a crown." She smiled, her eyes soft. And yet somehow, it still found one. From that day on, whenever the royal car passed through the streets of Lagos, it always stopped at one place, Golden Loaf Bakery. The people would watch as the prince stepped out, sometimes with Adaora by his side, sometimes alone. He would walk inside, buy a loaf of bread, and talk with the workers as if nothing had changed. To everyone else, he was Prince Kelechi, the royal who married a baker's daughter. But to Adaora, he was still just the man who once rode a rusty bike, wore dusty jeans, and showed her that love could rise just like bread from the simplest of beginnings. And every evening as the sun dipped behind the city, the smell of fresh bread mixed with laughter and memories, reminding everyone that sometimes, the greatest crowns are made not of gold but of love and truth.